It's time now for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good morning, all. Craig, I'd like to start with you, and this is the time where we have to make predictions. We've been doing this for 4 years before an election, and I guess I just want to get both your and Al's opinion on both the presidential race as well as the Senate and the House before Tuesday's election. What do you say?
Well, it's very close, but I'll go out on that limb. First of all, I think that what we have is an electorate that, for the most part, is locked in, and it's pretty much a dead heat. And so the question is, where do those undecided voters go in the closing days and perhaps hours? But for me, I'm even more fascinated by where people go who have yet decided whether they're going to vote. In other words, they're just frustrated with their choice, or they think it doesn't matter, or they're fed up with politics. And, from the primaries, I've been talking about this strange phenomenon of Republicans not coming out and actually voting for Trump, where he was getting literally hundreds of thousands of Republicans who had voted in prior primaries not coming out to vote in the primaries this year. And then you have the phenomenon of 20% of the voters, of the Republican voters, coming out to vote and voting for Nikki Haley. So they actually chose to vote, but they chose to vote against the front runner, Donald Trump. And for me, that's always been a weakness. So I am predicting that because Kamala Harris is giving her supporters more reason to vote for her with her closing statements. We can talk about that later. And because there's an enthusiasm behind her that undecided vote will break slightly for her. And those who decide not to vote are the people who've been telling the pollsters they're for Trump. But at the end of the day, the theatrics, the drama, the craziness of these closing days and weeks of the campaign, some could say months, are going to keep them from voting. And because of that, my prediction is Kamala Harris will end up winning on Election Day. I mean, I know it for a few days, but I think she'll win. And on the Senate and House, Al's better at this than I am. If I'm right, though, and a number of the Trump voters stay home because they're frustrated with him, it does change the equation, and it takes some of these close House races in California or in other states, and it would help favor the Democrats. So I'm thinking we may have a split Senate, but we may have a Democratic led House when we're through with this election.
Al, what's your predictions?
Well, first of all, I'd say if this were in an ordinary election, a year like this would be a Republican sweep. Almost 3/4 of the voters think the country's going on the wrong track. Inflation and the border are the two biggest issues which cut for the out party. So if the Republicans put up an ordinary human being, I think they'd win in a walk. But as we know, Trump's not an ordinary human being, and he's changed the whole stakes of the election. I mean, I've said all along that I think democracy is on the line. And I think that turned out to be a determinant in 2022, and I think it'll be in the Senate anyway, and it'll be a determinant in this year as well. Excuse me. I think all you have to do is look at the closing arguments of the two candidates and look at the strategies that those closing arguments are trying to further, and you really will get a sense of where the election's going to come out. They're symbolized, of course, by Trump's hate rally at Madison Square Garden and Harris's sort of inclusion rally on the lips. It's very clear that Trump has decided, as has been his wont all during this campaign, to double down on his base. He thinks that the way he wins is there are enough hidden MAGA voters who this hateful rhetoric will get out in the end to put him over the top. Harris's strategy is very different. She's going for the Haley voters. She's going for Republicans who don't like Trump, and for Republicans who are independents who lean Republican who don't like Trump. The symbol of Trump is probably J.D. Vance, the double down. The symbol of Harris is Liz Cheney. And my guess is a lot of the undecided who will actually vote are the kind of voters Harris is going for, and in the end, she's going to win a lot of them over. I mean, it's slow, but I saw yesterday Arnold Schwarzenegger endorsed Harris. My friend Fred Upton, a former congressman from Michigan, Republican, endorsed Harris. I just think there's going to be enough of those voters to put her over the top. Now, her strategy is really premised on the idea that Trump has a hard ceiling of 47%, 47.5%, and that if she appeals beyond her party, she can get most of the rest. And I think, in a sense, that's what's going to happen. So here's my prediction. Finally, time will catch up with Donald Trump. And Harris is going to win the late-breaking swing voters the way Reagan did in 1980. I think Trump will get his 47. Maybe he'll get it up to 47.5%. And Harris will get almost all the rest. I'd say she'd be in the 51 to 52% rate. And so Kamala Harris will be the next president. Very quickly on the Senate, since it's individual states, since it's really 50-50 to start with the West Virginia state seat going to the Republicans this time, it's going to depend on a couple of states. It's going to depend on Montana. John Tester has been running behind, but there's some scandals coming up late, and I've been in touch with somebody in Montana who tells me Hester is closing a little bit, whether he can get over the top or not, but that could very well determine the Senate. What happens in Ohio is going to be important because Sherrod Brown's running in enemy territory. And, if Ohio and Montana go Republican, it will mean likely that there are only two senators left who are of a different party than the candidate who won their states in the presidency. So I'd say the chances are the Republicans will win the Senate by a seat, maybe. It's possible it'll be 50-50. The House is harder to tell because nobody really knows what's going on in individual races except maybe Charlie Cook and Amy Walters. But my guess is that it will go pretty much like the presidential, and that the states, the seats that are going to decide it are likely to be in New York and in California. And so I think there's a chance. I think if Harris wins the presidency, the Democrats will win the House. But even if she comes close, I think there's a chance the Democrats could turn the House.
Craig, this is another form of prediction, but after every election in recent history, there has been some Monday quarterbacking, and we can recount how Mitt Romney and John Kerry were perceived as aloof or elite, that Hillary Clinton didn't visit Wisconsin and Michigan enough. And the list goes on. But when you look at this election, have there been any capital mistakes made, and what are they?
Well, first, let's take Kamala Harris, because really it's a pretty extraordinary campaign. Most candidates for president are seeking the office a full at least 2 years, and oftentimes 4 years or more in advance, and that does a number of things. It does allow them to get the staff aligned, It allows them to refine their message. It puts them out on the road. Now, she's been campaigning in the midterm elections, and she's been out a lot. And so she, I think, built her skills as a candidate. But that's different than running for president. And so to actually proclaim you're going to run in the summer, which is like July, is when she became a candidate for president, and structure the campaign organization to her liking. Obviously, she had the Biden organization in place, but she brought her own people in. She melded that together. I think that a message was crafted. She's a very disciplined candidate, and that's the word she uses, and I would agree, where she sticks to that message again and again and again, to the point where the media got tired of listening to it, and I suppose some of us who were kind of watching the campaign got a little tired of it, but it worked for her, and people heard the message. It's time to turn the page, things like that. And those themes that worked, she stayed with. Those that didn't work disappeared, and she brought in new ones. And I quite agree with Al and her closing message in Washington D.C. this week was really aimed at the people who were not yet decided on their choice, or not entirely sure of just who they whether they're going to vote at all. And she wanted to give them a reason to do that. And so I actually give her high marks. And for somebody who is sometimes critiqued for not being able to maintain the staffing that some people think she should have, she's really melded a staff together that I think has worked pretty effectively. If there was one thing that I would have liked to have seen more of, it's a little more of how she's feeling personally. Now, I will tell you that George H.W. Bush hated to do that. He said, I don't want to get on the couch and do another, analysis of, what my mother taught me and all that. He hated it, but it is what voters have come to want. I don't know Kamala Harris. I think she's probably checks herself. I think she's probably private in terms of a lot of her feelings. And it didn't come across as much. And I think she would have benefited if she had dropped the shield a little bit and let us, get to know her a little bit more in this. But honestly, for a campaign that started in earnest on July 28th, she's been on an amazing path. They found the states they needed to absolutely work on, and that's what they've been doing. You can't fault them for that. And she's got a very experienced group of people who've been involved in presidential campaigns involved in this campaign. For Donald Trump, to me, it's just a puzzle. His path to victory was always going to be to lock in that base early and then go broaden his constituency. And he seems to have forgotten the second part. He does double down. He does, he picks a vice presidential nominee who's doesn't really help him at all to broaden the base. And the things he says and does just make no sense. And that he's not really under control when the people who do the backgrounding in his campaign, again, some of them quite seasoned at presidential campaigns, background the press on what's going to happen in a speech. It's going to be a major foreign policy speech. Oh, he's going to pivot. He's going to just, lay out. He's going to be a closing arguments. And then he goes off on these rants for, 90 minutes or more. So it's been the opposite of disciplined. It's been the opposite of a campaign trying to broaden the base. He's out. Somebody were making jokes the other night. He's out, trying to sell products, watches and Bibles and coins, and it just I don't think ever came together. But I think the only thing that campaign can do is let Trump be Trump, and maybe, as Al says, maybe that gets him, to 47% of the voters. It's hard for me to see how he takes it over the top, though, with the way he's conducted the campaign.
Al, any major mistakes made by either candidate before?
Well, I think Trump is a major mistake. His campaign is really remarkable. I did a post yesterday on the new site that Craig and I have started. For all of you who want to go to it, you can go to fromandfuller.substack.com, where I talked about how the country's changed in the last 30 or 40 years. And just the most demographically, everybody knows the country's much more diverse than it was when Reagan ran or when Clinton ran. What you might not realize is that for all of our history, the dominant voting group has been non-college white voters. In other words, white voters without a college degree. When Reagan won re-election in 1984, non-college whites were 67% of the electorate. This year, for the first time, they've been dropping it about 2 points a year, an election, 2 or 3 points an election. It's the fastest decreasing group. This year, for the first time, they're going to be less than 40%. Now, how does that affect the outcome, and how does that affect? This is why I think Trump's strategy is so crazy. But Reagan and Trump in Reagan in 84 and Trump in 2020 won about the same percentage of those voters. But because they were such a much larger part of the electorate in 1984, Reagan won 59% of the overall vote. Trump won 46.7, I think, in 2020. So, you know, his strategy is basically to get that turn up and see if there may be 2 or 3 more drops he can squeeze out of it. It might work this time. I don't think it will, but it's certainly a strategy that could not work over the long haul. I think Harris, as Craig said, I think she's run a really spectacular campaign when you think about it in such a short time. I must admit, when I wasn't sure what kind of candidate we get from Kamala Harris. She didn't run a very good campaign in 2019 when she was in the presidential race. This has been superb. I mean, the most important thing she did is she took a dead campaign, a sure losing campaign, and built excitement almost instantaneously.
Yeah.
I mean, having 75,000 people on the ellipse, where Craig and I probably used to park when we worked in the White House, is really an astonishing achievement. You know, if she loses, I suspect there'll be 2 criticisms. One is that she didn't break sharply enough from some of her positions that she took in the last presidential. But when you think about it realistically, because I'm one of the people who would have liked to seen her break a lot more, but think about it realistically. She has 100 days to both restore and hold her base, which probably likes a lot of those positions, and reach out to people who don't. So she had to do it very carefully, and she did. And the second thing, and this I do believe, is she loses. I'd look no further than the Oval Office. I mean, Joe Biden is an anchor. People think his presidency is a failure. His staying in the race so long in that debate, I think, probably that started her out in the deep hole. And frankly, what he said the other night, I find unconscionable that he would do that, make any kind of a statement like that on the most important night, in a sense, since the convention for her campaign, or since the debate anyway, for her campaign. But I don't think all of that's going to matter, because I think people probably have written Biden off, and they know this is a race between Harris and Trump. So, I mean, I guess where I come out on the campaigns, it all comes back to strategy, and I think Trump has had one that I don't understand. It certainly isn't what a normal political figure would do, and I think Harris has taken a very difficult circumstance where she was an unknown figure 3 months ago, and it run a really pretty remarkable campaign.
Well, we have to leave it there. Al Fromm, Craig Fuller, thank you so much indeed. We will see you on the other side of this election.